This is Business Incorporated on Channels Television, and we're glad to have you with us at this time. I am Bosin Omofaye. Now, coming up over the next 30 minutes, United Kingdom posts a sluggish 0.1% growth in the first quarter of 2018. And South Africa's businessman Christo Wyss seeks $5 billion compensation from a company where he was a former largest shareholder. In the meantime, the price of petrol and gasoline will go up from the month of May in South Africa. And that's part of the business news we're following at this point in time. Let's get the show started with data from the Office for National Statistics today, showing the UK's economy posted the weakest growth in 5 years at 0.1% in the first quarter of the year. The office attributes the drag in the GDP to the construction sector, which shrank sharply 3.3% in the first 3 months. Production increased by 0.7%, with the manufacturing growth slowing to 0.2%. The services industries were the largest contributor to UK's GDP, increasing by 0.3% in the first quarter, although the long-term trend continues to show a weakness in services growth. Let's move on and look at the market. We had the markets here on the African continent now, where Nigeria's all-share index is around 0.06% in intraday. That's the numbers you seen about an hour and a half ago. In South Africa, the bigger GSE all-share index was almost 1%, one of the broadest on the African continent. And the Egyptian market, of course, is closed for Friday, where it's already a weekend. The case 30, that's the index, jumped 1.3% to 18,363 on Thursday. In Nairobi, the stock exchange finished Thursday about 0.2% in the red. Let's move the needle to the Middle East, where the Gulf markets are closed for the week, but ended Thursday's session largely positive. The Saudi Tadawul stock index finished about 0.2% at 8,248 points, hovering at a nearly 2-year high. The Qatar's index lost 0.27% after a spate of strong earnings helped recent gains, and the index was up 6.6% so far in 2018. The Dubai financial markets, called the DFM, was about 0.5% also in the green, while the Abu Dhabi's index was up about the same margin on Thursday. Okay, let's get to Europe, where the stock market is looking set to lock in weekly gains as investors monitor another batch of earnings while keeping one eye on the political sphere and other news around the DMC, with the North and South Korea having that historic handshake. Let's cross to the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, where my colleague Conrad Bosin of DWTV is standing by for Channels Television to lock in more details about today's business and the markets. Conrad, it's good to get back together again. Let's get this conversation going with the GDP numbers coming from the UK at a very lackluster 0.1%, and also the US President Donald Trump meeting with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel in the White House. Quite a lot on the summit between the South Koreans, the North Koreans, Angela Merkel and Donald Trump, the other. While in the middle, we have the UK reporting that disappointing growth numbers.
Well, perfectly right, Bosin. The market has a lot to digest today. I think from a German and European point of view, one of the most important political events is not so much North Korea and South Korea, but what's going on in the Washington White House, where our Chancellor Angela Merkel will meet President Trump. Of course, she will address the trade disputes, and she will also address the fundamental disagreement that the Trump administration has with the German government about the nature of this trade surplus that Germany has towards the United States. Remember, Trump thinks that this is really not good for America, but here in Germany, people perceive the trade surplus or the American trade deficit as something perfectly normal, and that you cannot really compare this with a company and losses and profits as a company. Well, of course, people here are looking forward to having Angela Merkel, our chancellor, with her very dry and down-to-earth style, trying to convince Trump otherwise. The GDP numbers, of course, coming in from the United Kingdom were important. You said so, lackluster growth in the first quarter. It had to do a lot with the harsh winter. Remember how everyone talked about the beast from the east hitting the United Kingdom, cold winter coming from Eastern Europe, slowing down the economy here. Now, of course, everyone is discussing whether this is a one-off effect and whether, well, during this current quarter, consumption will pick up, industrial production will pick up, or the British economy might be inspired by the new royal baby called Louis Arthur Charles. You know how the Brits are. As soon as the royal family, you know, gets a new member, they all get enthusiastic. Maybe that will inspire the economy.
Maybe. But then, man, let's shift gear a little bit to France, where this billionaire tycoon, Vincent Bolloré, commonly referred to as Monsieur Afrique, is now being arrested and being investigated over his close ties to the African continent and some of the continent's leader. What does this mean for Mr. Bolloré's shares in his companies?
Well, the shares of Bolloré's holding company has gotten quite a beating of this. It has lost at least 6% because of those allegations. And of course, we have to keep in mind that Bolloré's holdings have been built on Africa. They hold nearly an monopoly on ports and logistics in West and Central Africa. The conglomerate runs most of the seaports in the region, as well as several dry ports, airports, railroads. It also deals with palm oil plantations, marketing companies, and television. So, of course, the allegations are very dangerous for Bolloré's company. Havas Advertising, which is a subsidiary of Bolloré, he owns the company, is said to have provided discounted communications advice to two African presidents in their election campaigns. I'm speaking of the president of Guinea, Alpha Condé, and the president of Togo, Faure Gnassingbé, in return for getting licenses for ports in Conakry and Lomé. Of course, this is poisonous for Bolloré, and there's a lot of talk about this here on the European continent. What's good about this, I have to say, is that the French investigators are not just looking over it like they used to be in the past. I don't know, of course, you in Nigeria, you all speak English, but the word France-Afrique, French Africa, if you want, France-Afrique, that described this very unhealthy connection, nearly mafia-like connection of many business people with French-speaking policymakers on the African continent in the past. And now, these days, many people here are convinced that this has to be a thing in the past, that this is not the way how to do business in the future. And those investigators in Paris, at least, show that they want to really look into this and that they want to know what was going on. Of course, one has to doubt whether they will find out a great deal. It's very difficult to find evidence in cases like this, but the mere fact that this is addressed is positive.